Okay, Friday edition of the After Show. Got Wink and Justice with you. Wink over here on the East Coast.
And Justice over here on the west coast of the contiguous United States of America. It is Angle of Repose Friday on the After Show. Surveys say that is the angle in which a granular substance stays in place on a slope. But hey, we insist it's the angle in which you are reclining in your Barca lounger while reading Wallace Stegner's Angle of Repose.
Heck yeah.
If you're not maybe reading all the little live things instead. Well, it's up to you. All right, Wink, how you doing?
Oh, man, yeah. It is 35 degrees here in New York 21, so that's not too bad. That's an improvement over 10. It's been the last couple of days, so that's good. It's finally warmed up a little bit. It's going to rain today, they say. It looks okay so far today, but I imagine the rain will come. Mind you, get the chat. Just go to netrootsradio.com. Scroll down to the bottom of the page, and on the right-hand side of the bottom of the page, there is a link to the chat. So click that and join us there.
And just to the leftish of the chat room link are the contribute, donate buttons. Thank you for your generosity. We need some equipment and software upgrades. And thank you for helping us attend to that. We'll be having a little bit more news in the weeks to come about a little plan. We'll let you know. And, one other thing. After show pods can be had later in the day, sometimes quick, sometimes later in the day, but we call it the raw data file. That can be had by way of Spreaker. And then the perfected file, the cleaner version, without all the hisses. That will be available later on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Here along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, it is currently, I scrolled down here 43, almost 44 degrees. We are raining. We will have rain for the rest of the day. And we are projected to go up to 55. And looks like rain for the next several days with temperatures in the mid-50s, lows in the low 40s. So it's springtime.
Yeah.
And I got the window of sun yesterday, so I was out in the yard. I mowed the lawn, got that somewhat taken care of.
Yep.
I mean, there's still edging. I got a picnic table with an umbrella, a wooden umbrella in it. And I'm not able to get it out of the stand because the wood got swollen. So I don't know. Do I wait for it to sort of dry out, maybe? Or do I just cut that thing and just say screw it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have to move the picnic table to be able to get underneath to mow. And it's like a jungle. It was a jungle, Wink.
No doubt, yeah.
Boy. And I owe it to fertilizing and seeding in the fall. It's the only explanation. I have a healthy yard.
There you go.
But we were still putting the yard together this time last year since it had been packed into a concrete hard surface for about more than a decade.
Right.
So I'm just seeing the fruits of my labor. And now I have to work harder because of it. Damn, how does that work out? But I love the bloom. Everything is in bloom. I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't been impacted quite yet by any of the pollen floating around.
Yeah, same here so far.
I actually hate the idea. I've really consciously, and I suppose subconsciously, if that is possible, attempted not to associate the blooming of flowers with sneezing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I try to make myself believe that my sneezing is not caused by all this beautiful color that surrounds me in the world.
Right.
And I don't know. I try not to attribute it to anything. It just happens. But I got to tell you, it's coincidental how some of the sneezing really gets pronounced when there's tremendous, beautiful color in the world. It's almost human nature to attribute it to that. But I try really hard not to, because I love that beauty just too much.
There you go.
And I'm not willing to take over-the-counter allergy medicines. When I was cooking for a living in the cooking wars, as we used to call it, I did take some like Sudafed and stuff because, you can't sneeze, go wash your hands, or, find a place to sneeze, right?
Right.
Go wash your hands, come back, it just
Yep.
it can't do it. So I had to do something to get myself through the shift. Of course, the capacity I was working in meant, those were like 12, 14-hour days.
Right.
So 12 hours Sudafed.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And so I'm hoping I didn't destroy my kidneys and my liver.
Right.
I'm
exactly.
hoping. And fortunately, well, I didn't have to take it all the time. But I just remember that, is that I was at my wit's end. I tried every possible organic, natural, by diet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't happening. It's like when my friend got Giardia in Yosemite. Now, he had gotten it at a rainbow gathering maybe 15 years before that.
Right.
And so when that had happened, he went through homeopathy and he did all sorts of things, purges, fish oil purges. And he went for like about a week and he had lost he looked deathly. And so he finally said, screw it, give me the insecticide, because that's the kind of medicine they give you to get rid of Giardia. And he came back. So that kind of taught him a little lesson. So when he contracted it again, that's a problem with these intestinal amoebic invasions.
Right.
Is that even though you may be cured of that invasion, they leave little pits inside your intestines. So it doesn't take much to latch onto that when it's inside you and then propagate.
Yep.
And then you're sick again. So that's one of the reasons why those who have had dysentery or Giardia or, any of that tend to get it again because, their intestines have been damaged from that invasion and it's just easier. But I remember, we hauled him out, 18 miles the last day. It sucked. And he was the whole time saying, I don't care. Just give me the insecticide. Just give me the insecticide. I remember that was pretty funny. So, sometimes you're at your wit's end. Yep. And you go, okay, forget it. The slower, probably healthier in some ways method is not working. Just give me the insecticide. Life can be confusing, Week. Hey, these are the issues we are attending to today. Let's see. Okay, there's a different resolution going on. The healthcare bill is being voted on. If it hasn't already when I wasn't looking. I've had C-SPAN on muted. But, okay, I don't know. This looks like a Homeland Security resolution that they're determining on right now. We'll keep you updated as we find out what's going on. All right, so the GOP kills the infrastructure bill, Wink, because of the Buy American rule.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, oh, yeah.
Now, of course, Trump did say, buy American, hire American. Of course, he never does, right? But it's supposed, there is a rule in that infrastructure bill to buy American. And they go, nah, come on, we're talking about the bottom line. Do you really think if we're willing to kick 24, 30 million people off of health insurance, we really care whether they have a job? Oh, I'm sorry. That was in this reporter's opinion. Exxon says it has lost a year's worth of Rex Tillerson sock puppet emails it was ordered to turn over to the New York Attorney General. Remember when Hillary turned over like all of her emails and there was like, I don't know, some ones that she didn't consider to be like part of her job, right? And then, and we're still hearing about that. And she turned those over too, right?
Yep.
It's just crazy. And I bring this next story up is because I hate it when conservatives and liberals trash Chelsea Clinton. All right. So this next story has that in mind. And that is Ivanka Trump lives in New York, works at the White House, but is not an employee subject to federal rules. Okay. Well, that way she can converse with Russian mobster oligarchs and not be violating the Hatch Act or Logan Act or anything like that. I think that's probably what it is. Hey, we made it to Friday, and on the last half, it's the Friday News Dump and Recycling Center news that's been repurposed with a purpose. Wink, Russia sold off 1/5 of its state-owned oil giant Rosneft in December, but we still don't know who bought it all. We hear a lot about how the deal was made, possibly, and some folks who might have collected a commission. But who bought it? Curious, isn't it? Oh, and I should add, Putin was able to pull off the sale without ever saying who bought it. And Wisconsin is the point man for a billionaire and corporate-funded coup to rewrite the Constitution. Yeah. Huh. They only need 5 more states, Wink, for a constitutional convention. Just saying. See, these things happen when you're looking at some very important issues that are occurring. And what do? It's like disaster capitalism, isn't it? Truly. Hey, all that plus the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar and more on the after show with that ever so fine fellow over there on the East Coast with his ever so subtle East Coastal elitism. Some people hate that. Others embrace it. And his name is Wink. And this guy all the way back over here on the West Coast. And I totally embrace my elitism and yours. And my name is Justice. And we do this 5 days a week for an hour-ish in this particular, specific, and peculiar tear in the fabric of space-time. Because who loves you, baby? Oh, and one other thing. I love that. Oh, and one other thing.
Yeah, indeed.
But I got to tell you, Peter Falk and those guys, the props they had to use. So, like, Peter Falk had the big old cigar. I've never really bit into cigars, but it did lend to his, old-timey, crusty, old-school detective persona that he was trying to pull off, right?
Yeah.
But with a little bit more going on. He had, like, the natural detective instincts, but he was rather learned. Remember, he taught classes and stuff. So.
Right.
But that cigar, I kind of forget about that. I mean, it's like people smoked. I mean, people smoked in the doctor's waiting room. Remember those days?
Yes.
Oh, hell.
Indeed.
There's some things about the past that I truly don't want to go back to. When we were hippies and we were talked about going back to the land, we didn't think about going back to the land and tilling it with a wooden plow.
Right.
I mean, we wired that baby up.
Okay.
Come on. Indoor plumbing is a good thing. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I think indoor plumbing is a good thing. So
it helps.
It
helps a lot.
Going back to the land didn't mean going back to 1830.
Right. Exactly.
So, all right. Okay. So, Buy American. I just love the platitudes they put out. They always do. And this is by David Sirota, who, by the way, just got hired by the Young Turks. And this is written in the International Business Times. Courting the Midwest voters who proved pivotal in his election, Donald Trump has consistently reiterated his campaign promise to rebuild America's infrastructure and protect domestic jobs. We will have 2 simple rules. Excuse me. We will have I got to do a proper Donald Trump persona, but I won't this day. 2 simple rules when it comes to this massive rebuilding effort, he told a thank you rally in December. We call them like Nuremberg rallies. I think that's really what it is. Those 2 simple rules, buy American and hire American. Of course, the Trump Foundation just recently took out another request for like another 1,800 foreign workers to come work at his resorts. Just saying. Because, they can't find any competent, experienced help in the local area. And you know why? Because they kind of want something more than just barely a living wage.
Right.
In other words, he can't hire parasites. See, this is the way those guys think, Wink. Their workers are parasites rather than, I don't know, at least part of the machine that's making you money.
Right.
Oh, Jesus. See, this is what we're fighting for now, Wink. We don't want to be considered parasites. Just make us cogs in the machine again. We'll be happy with that.
Yeah.
Within days, though, House Republicans, under pressure from lobbyists for foreign companies, had killed legislation that directed government infrastructure contracts to American manufacturing companies. How dare we? It was a bold act of defiance against the rhetoric of the newly elected president. And now, a top Democrat is attempting to force Trump to put his Buy American promises into action against his own party in Congress. Now it's our turn to play five-dimensional chess on this guy. This is interesting. On Friday, Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin will introduce, that's today, by the way, legislation requiring billions of dollars of the government spending on water infrastructure to go only to products that use American steel. Baldwin's move is particularly notable because she hails from a state that proved critical to Trump's win. It is also the state of House Speaker Paul Ryan, the Republican whose office helped kill the initiative in December. Now is the time for President Trump to... Oh, who said this? Tammy? I guess she's doing it out of deference, damn it. To decide if he will keep his promises by supporting this legislation, or will he go along to get along with congressional Republicans who have embraced the status quo and block this legislation that puts in place a strong Buy American standard. Said Baldwin, who planned to announce a bill at a Wisconsin foundry that makes manhole covers for cities throughout the United States. The choice for the Republican establishment in Washington is clear. Do you stand with American manufacturers and workers, or do you support spending taxpayer dollars on Chinese and Russian steel for American water infrastructure projects? And I got to tell you, I have been arguing for U.S. steel manufacturing since, well, the early 80s. You know, when Reagan started outsourcing it all.
Right. Right.
Mostly because, you know, I admit I worked in industries where we use steel. And I got to tell you, we were getting Chinese steel, some Canadian steel. No slam against the Canadians. They're like close to us, right?
Right. Right.
But the recipe, the making of steel is really a close held secret in many ways. And nobody anywhere in the world has been able to make U.S. steel.
Right.
Only we can do that. And it is a drag working with inferior steel, Wink. But people have become so accustomed to it. It's like I had a girlfriend when she had like her first like real potato or French fry, right? She thought it tasted fake because all she had was, you know, the extruded, powdered, reconstituted McDonald's kind.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So had become so accustomed to this inferior fake thing that when she finally tasted the real stuff, it tasted fake to her.
Yeah.
So we've become so accustomed to terrible steel, corroding steel in bridges that we build. It's supposed to not corrode in salt. Arid air environments. Bay Bridge in San Francisco being a problem with that. So when I talk about we need to have U.S. steel for things, I'm not like echoing the rhetoric of Bush, or I mean of Bush. Well, he was one of them, but of Trump. This is something that it's been a problem for decades, 40 some odd years. But do you get it? Chinese and now Russian steel. We're not even getting Canadian steel anymore. All right. Well, of course, the international lobbyists for international companies, and I have no problem with them. I mean, come on, they're doing their job too, right? It's sort of funny that they are the ones that come out accusing this whole effort as being a form of protectionism, which I guess it is in a way, isn't it? But I would like to see steel manufactured again in this country.
Yes, big time.
But it is interesting because it is forcing Trump's hand because he espouses this rhetoric, yet never once says, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. Because he certainly doesn't do it, within his own, organization in terms of buying and hiring American. All right. Well, it's curious that the GOP did that, though. And it wasn't, I got to tell you, it wasn't because it was a slam against Trump necessarily. But I think that there's some issues about some, money being changing hands.
Yeah. Yep.
Got that? Oh, just as an aside, one of the more curious aspects of why the Republicans seem so loath in investigating, the Russian collusion is that it's turned out that they actually hired a Russian company to do Oppo research on Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
That company might be, washed up in the backwash of this whole investigation. And maybe there's some people, not just on the Trump team.
Right. I did see that.
Whew. Okay, Rex Rillerson. What the heck? Rex Tillerson sock puppet emails.
I call him T-Rex.
Exactly. But this whole thing about his emails and the sock puppet aspect of it, and then you have like one of the most hardworking Secretary of States that we've ever had. And they're on her case about emails. And then you look at somebody like this who uses subterfuge and guile and then project. And then I'm not just talking about Tillerson, but the whole concept that allows this behavior to occur and then project it on good people doing good work. This is why I think we're at least in purgatory, if not already in hell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
We have been condemned, Wink. I just hope it's purgatory and we can work our way out of it.
Right.
This is, by the way, by Samantha Page out of Think Progress. Last week it came out that Secretary of State Rex Tillerson used an alias email account to discuss climate change, along with other corporate issues with other high-level executives and board members while he was CEO of ExxonMobil. Now Exxon says it has lost a year's worth of those emails. I don't know. I think we need to go to the Wayback Machine, Wink. Is that possible, though? Do you know enough about this? Could in-house emails, I guess they couldn't be saved in the Wayback Machine. When they say anything goes on the internet, stays on the internet.
Pretty much, yeah.
So
somebody could dig them up if they're actually on somebody's like Gmail or something like that. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll see. So a New York judge on Wednesday ordered the company to work with New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman's office to produce all the documents covered under a subpoena for communication about climate change, including emails to and from Wayne Tracker, the alias used by Tillerson. Exxon is currently under investigation by Schneiderman and Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey, following allegations that the company knowingly misled the public on the risks of climate change. Now, that's part of it. What they really did is they misled their shareholders, and those stockholders could have lost money. And that's what's much more important than, our coastline being inundated and people falling over dead because of heat stroke and bad air. All right? We're talking about bank accounts here. That's the only thing that motivates these things. And we ought to be clear about it, and we ought to use it to make sure that we don't have eroding beaches inundated with seawater. And we can, breathe good air. I kind of like it, don't you? Maybe have a temperature that's a little bit more temperate. I like that too. Schneiderman's office says the company did not initially disclose the Wayne Tracker email account was actually Tillerson's. Manhattan State Supreme Court Justice Barry Ostrager told Exxon to provide statements and records that would explain how exactly they managed to lose the Wayne Tracker emails. Well, we took the server and the hard drive and we took it out and threw it in the garbage after we smashed it up with sledgehammers. Okay. Maybe that fulfills
case,
all they need.
Yep.
Yeah, I think maybe that's all that's needed to fulfill. He only asked. I mean,
Right.
Judge only asked.
Right.
How'd you do it? So Tillerson's middle name is Wayne, and the company has said the email account was used to help Tillerson connect directly with other executives since his primary email account was so overloaded. Really? Well, I don't know. Delete them. I don't understand. What are you talking about? You don't know how to do filters? Probably not. You know, when I was working in that industry, I got to say I kind of, carried a youthful elitist attitude, Well, they used to call me the college boy. Let's put it that way, and not in a nice way. But I used to not tell them, to their faces because I just thought it would be impolite. And yeah, I don't know. You don't want to have that hostile of a work environment. So I just laugh it off. But I used to think, this whole industry is like geared so that a 12-year-old could do it. You close a valve here before you open a valve over there. I mean, it's not rocket science, right? And I used to think the industry didn't really draw the brightest lights of our society. And maybe that's the reason why, because all you have to do is close the valve here before you open the valve over there. And I got to tell you how many times people made that mistake. They did it backwards. And you just think, oh my God. And that's the kind of people that move up the chain sometimes too, They forget to close the valve before they open the other one. Next thing you know, you got a nuke war in your hands. Well, the company has been under investigation since 2015 when Inside Climate News and the LA Times independently discovered that Exxon scientists were aware of the risk of climate change as far back as the 1970s. You didn't really have to dig very far because they used to have commercials about it, Wink, about rising sea levels. They used to glorify in the 50s about, with all this great energy we'll have, we'll warm up the planet, we'll live in Eden, it'll be a paradise. The ice caps will melt, and we'll be able to have like Northwest Passage, and we'll be able to grow everywhere we want. Hee-haw! I'm serious! We didn't know. Okay, well, Schneiderman is doing some good work, and it's up to these states' attorney generals apparently to be able to do it. Until we can, get through the midterms, and I hope to God that we show up this time.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I don't know. I would like to have Chelsea Clinton in some public office. What's wrong with that? I don't understand what it is about this hate of the Clintons. It's a massive brainwashing. She's evil and a witch, and all of her family are too. All they are money-grubbing opportunists. I mean, are you kidding me? I thought it was a virtue in this society. The ones who are the most money-grubbing opportunists are the ones that are calling the Clintons that.
There you go.
Right?
Projection, yeah.
The ones who never put any money into their charitable organizations but always take it out.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are condemning the Clinton Global Initiative for feeding poor people. Just to make that clear. Christina Silva, out of Newsweek. Ivanka Trump is one of her father's closest advisors. She moved from New York City to Washington, D.C. to be closer for his work, and was given a prime office in the White House. She has been called the de facto First Lady of the United States, but technically, she doesn't work for the government. Trump, who has a security clearance, is not a White House employee, which means she is not subject to certain transparency and ethical provisions. And she doesn't have to worry about a law prohibiting conflicts of interest, which could affect her family's vast business empire. Her husband, Jared Kushner, is also a senior advisor to the president, but he is a White House employee. Interesting. While there is no modern precedent for an adult child of the president, I will voluntarily follow all of the ethics rules placed on government employees. Trump, age 35, has said in a statement. Was this before or after the jewelry line was publicized on the official White House account? No, I really want to know. Was that before? Was that statement before that happened or after? Okay. So there was a letter signed by two former White House lawyers that said, on the one hand, her position will provide her with the privileges and opportunities for service that attach to being a White House employee. On the other hand, she remains the owner of a private business who is free from the ethics and conflicts rules that apply to all White House employees. Richard Painter, one of the letter's signatories and President George W. Bush's chief ethics counselor, said it is unprecedented for a White House to retain such high-powered non-employees. You know, Painter is also the fellow who said that everything points to treason. And that's why we're hearing Bannon-inspired, Breitbart, InfoWars-inspired BS that George W. Bush is part of this vast left-wing conspiracy of Obama bots to bring down Trump through illegal surveillance. Isn't it weird how their mind works?
Yeah.
All right. The other signatory is Fred Wertheimer, president of the Washington watchdog Democracy 21, said that Ivanka should not be treated differently than any other government employee just because she's the president's daughter. This is untenable. She can make a decision at any time not to comply, and there's no penalty or sanction whatsoever. We don't normally have White House employees voluntarily complying with rules that were enacted to protect the American people. The reason the rules are there is because when there weren't any rules, what happened? Yeah. Well, we know. Ulysses S. Grant. I just got to say, great general, helped win the Civil War, one of the most corrupt. I mean, there was like bags of money going through the White House. I mean, it was part of the reason why we have the rules we have now. Really began because of Ulysses S. Grant. So it's not as if it's new. All right, let's get to our Jim Hightower break. We'll come back, go through the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Codes community calendar, and then the stories on the Friday News Dump and Recycling Center. You are listening to The After Show on Netroots Radio with Wink and Justice, and we will be right back.
You know what our country needs right now? I think we need something that can bring us together again, something that can heal the raw wound of deep political division imperiling our society. And guess what? One company has come out with just the balm America needs, an ad for a luxury automobile. Seriously? Yes, the cultural bridge builders at Cadillac have produced an advertising campaign intended not only to sell its pricey cars, but also to heal America's social divide. How? By reminding TV audiences about everyone's desire to achieve the American dream, as symbolized, of course, by the status symbol of owning a Cadillac. Seriously? Yes. The ad begins with a stark declaration. We are a nation divided. That's what they tell us. Then Cadillac's ad suddenly shifts gears, gliding into an uplifting, touchy-feely montage of all in this together inclusiveness. We carry each other forward, the narrator purrs, no matter who we are or what we believe. Mustering all of the modesty you would expect from a Cadillac executive, the corporation's marketing head explains that we didn't want to enter the political debate, we wanted to transcend it. Ah, yes, and how better to go beyond rancorous political disharmony than to drive away from it in a luxury car. This is Jim Hightower saying the corporate honchos tried out this message on an unbiased audience of Texas Cadillac dealers. And guess what? They loved it. One dealer gushed that the ad identifies the ultra-expensive car with, quote, unity, optimism, courage. Seriously? Yes, apparently Cadillac thinks the right and left, the rich and poor, can all become e pluribus unum again by unifying around America's new egalitarian slogan, $100,000 car in every garage.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Okay, we're back.
And indeed, we are back. Thank you for sticking with us. This is the after show of Wink and Justice here on Networks Radio. Justice here along the banks of the Rogue River, in Southern Oregon, and Wink is in upstate New York on the East Coast. And our crew are the ethereal creatures who reside in the cloud whose advanced intergalactic technical abilities allow Networks Radio and thus by extension the after shows span the globe, the solar system, and beyond.
Heck yeah.
Got through that. These last stories on the Friday News Dump Recycling Center have a bit of breadth to them and heft, as we shall we say.
Good.
So it should hurry up. Okay, today's Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast Community Calendar is facilitated by Smiley Creek, and her question is, why do we get earworms? And what are earworms? Do you get incessant earworms? Ever wonder why we get them? And I guess earworms are those sorts of, when I'm trying to think, there's another term for it, but you get a tune stuck in your head.
Yeah.
Right? Can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
So,
happens a lot, unfortunately. Yep. And usually a tune I hate.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
I used to really get it. Not only I would have the tune stuck in my head. It kind of pissed me off.
Yep.
So I used to get pissed off whenever I'd hear the Carpenters' "Close to You."
Yeah.
It was like stuck in my head. I couldn't get rid of it, and it was like, oh my God!
Just shoot me.
I'm getting it. I'm gonna drown in Neapolitan ice cream, and it's not even real ice cream. It's ice milk.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Oh.
Exactly.
Worst. Yeah. Okay, Wisconsin Cossacks are forming a group, so get a hold of Krista Kolodem if you'd like to become part of that. And we have a big story in Wisconsin here coming up, so we need to have an existent group to fight against the forces arrayed against light and goodness.
We do.
Don't you think?
Yep.
Navajo maintains the event list. Do cosmail her if you have any diaries or questions or issues about an event coming up, or you want to announce an event. Left Candid and Colorado Tim are the leaders of the Colorado community, and they run the Caffeinating Liberally meetup every fourth Saturday of every month, and they're going to be meeting up tomorrow, March 25th, at Common Grounds Coffee House, 44th and Vallejo in Denver, from 9 a.m. to noonish at the table by the piano. So get a hold of them and let them know you're showing up. The New England Cossacks are going to be meeting up April 22nd at noon at Flatbread Pizza in Portland, Maine, Cosmail and Hawks 42 to RSVP for a seat. New York City Cossacks will be welcoming Navajo in town on April 23rd at Spitzer's Corner, 101 Rivington Street in the Ludlow District. And the cross street just happens to be Ludlow. That'll be at high noon. Cosmail Navajo to RSVP. There are plenty showing up for that event, and they need more. So get a hold of it. Thinking Fella and Ojibwa are organizing the third Epic Glacier National Park meetup, and that will be occurring June 30th through July 2nd. There's a diary on the Connect Unite Act diary with important planning details that you'll need to know. So get a hold of Thinking Fella and Ojibwa to RSVP, and they'll remind you to look at that diary as well. And it looks like Bill in Portland, Maine is on the mend. Oh, that's a good thing. Because the Daily Co's annual Cheers and Jeers dinner at Netroots Nation will be occurring this year on Wednesday, August 9th in Atlanta, of course, at 5:30 p.m. And Cosmail Navajo to RSVP a seat, and that will also determine where the event will be occurring. So to be determined. And that is indeed your Connect Unite Activity Codes community calendar for the 24th of March of 2017.
Yeah, moving along. Yep.
Boy. Yep. Yeah, I got the Arbor Society sent me 10 trees, Wink. I have no room for them. So I'm giving them to my sister. She's got some pretty good ones. But there's a couple of them that will grow 50 feet.
Wow. Yeah.
With like a 30, 40-foot canopy. I'm all, I mean, my yard's big.
Yeah.
But I've already got 3 white birches that are,
they'll take care of the shade. Yeah.
Probably 75 feet already.
Yeah.
So they're planted in the traditional triumptive style. 3 of them.
Right.
I've got a beautiful cedar that is at least 40 feet. And then I've put in a Japanese maple. That's not going to grow as high, of course. Let's see, the plum tree, supposed to be an ornamental plum. It's not. It's edible. And fruit isn't so bad, actually. And that's got to be at least 30 feet with a fair canopy and, quite knobby wood because it's a fairly old tree and doing still quite well. 10 more trees. I don't know where to put them.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Especially big ones like that.
Yep.
Okay. So, here we go. Now, David did go through a article about this sale, but from a little bit different tact and its summation is admittedly somewhat questionable. And this one by Joe Rome out of Think Progress takes a little bit different tact. Rather than going into the Mayflower Hotel, probably just connecting the dots and, because it's a little tough. So here we go. As the FBI investigates possible collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign, one aspect merits closer examination: the $11 billion post-election sale of 19.5% of the Kremlin-controlled oil giant, Rosneft. If there was an actual quid pro quo between Trump officials and the Russian government, it may well involve that sale for 2 reasons. First, prior to the election, most industry watchers had written off the chances of a foreign investor being found for Rosneft. And that was a quote out of a Fortune article that explained at the time. But electing someone who had vowed to improve relations with Russia appears to have changed the economic landscape. Second, as Reuters has detailed, Russian President Vladimir Putin managed to sell off this oil jewel without saying who bought it. In this post, I'll attempt to connect, and this is Joe Rome, as many dots as possible on the Russian-Putin-Rosneft connection. At Monday's House Intelligence Committee hearing, where FBI Director James Comey announced his agency's investigation into Team Trump, ranking member Adam Schiff, Democrat of California, connected some of the dots. First, Schiff noted
In early July, Carter Page, someone candidate Trump identified as one of his national security advisors, travels to Moscow on a trip approved by the Trump campaign. He was nominally there to give a speech critical of the United States and other Western countries. One of Trump's national security advisors goes to Russia to trash the U.S. and NATO. Wink. But, Schiff notes, according to Christopher Steele, a former British intelligence officer who is reportedly held in high regard by U.S. intelligence, Russian sources tell him that Page also has had a secret meeting with Igor Shenchin, CEO of Russian gas giant Rosneft. And the UK Guardian identifies Sechin as Putin's de facto deputy. Schiff notes that according to Steele's Russian sources, Page is offered brokerage fees by Sechin on a deal involving a 19% share of the company. Okay, interesting. Oh, one other thing. Let me mention about Christopher Steele and the so-called dossier. It's not a dossier, all right. It's raw cables from actual assets saying, I've heard people talking about this and other people have talked about that. I heard someone, an actual official mention this during a cocktail party. I read an article in an obscure, neighborhood investigative newspaper. Okay. So a lot of Christopher Steele's dossier is being dismissed because the only thing that we ever get to hear about is that Trump likes to be peed on or likes to pee on people. All right. So we hear that and then everybody's like, oh, whoa, that's kind of creaky. That's not what the story is. The story is all this other stuff that's being unveiled. And it's curious to me how the P-tape aspect of it gets all the play and then therefore diminishes and demeans the actuality of what Steele's collection of information really reveals. Schiff explains that since this is a public hearing, his remarks are drawn from public sources alone, not all of which have been confirmed. What makes Schiff's concern so salient now is that Putin did sell off 19.5% of Rosneft in early December, and that, as Reuters reported, it still is not possible to determine from public records the full identities of those who bought it. No FBI investigation into collusion can possibly be considered complete if it cannot determine the full slate of buyers and whether any of them are connected to Trump officials or the Trump business empire. An examination of the Rosneft sale should start by looking at the 2014 deal between Exxon and Rosneft, valued at $500 billion, and eventually killed by sanctions imposed by the Obama administration. After Putin went into the Ukraine and confiscated part of the Crimea for his own personal use, and 8,500 Ukrainians were killed. Why did Putin do that? Because the people of Ukraine said, we don't want to be run by Russia and Putin. And Putin said, too bad. And the world said, you can't do that. And so Exxon made a deal with him during this. Nice, huh? The deal would have married ExxonMobil with its expertise in Arctic drilling to Rosneft, Russia's state-owned, otherwise known as Putin-controlled oil giant, with its vast reserves in inhospitable locations. Coincidentally, it was then Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson, now the Secretary of State, who negotiated the deal with Trump and Sechin. Tillerson's rise as Exxon's Russian czar happened to coincide with the rise in power of both Putin and Sechin and their successful kleptocratic efforts to expand Rosneft. Now, not only was the deal crucial to the future of Exxon, as the Wall Street Journal reported in 2014, since the company was short on reserves, it was expected to change the historical trajectory of Russia, according to the Wall Street Journal, which desperately needed a long-term source of hard currency, as Rachel Maddow later explained. So, the sanctions imposed by President Obama after Russia seized Crimea in 2014 were a dagger to the heart of Russia's economy and Putin's wallet. Suddenly, the Kremlin had a $500 billion motive to elect someone who would end the sanctions. Since the election, we've learned that key members of Trump's campaign's team, including Trump himself, met with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak while denying publicly that they had. In particular, Trump's national security advisor, Michael Flynn, was forced to resign after it turned out he talked with Kislyak about softening the sanctions. CNN notes that current and former U.S. intelligence officials have described Kislyak as a top spy and a recruiter of spies. Another key development since the election, Putin pulled off the Rosneft sale in December. When Fortune reported on this deal, they pointed out that it was confounding expectations that the Kremlin's standoff with the West would scare off major investors. But this deal pointed to a possible reassessment by foreign investors of the risks of dealing with Russia at a time with the election of Donald Trump as U.S. president had heightened expectations of a thaw between Russia and Washington. Significantly, the $11 billion raised by the sale went to the Kremlin, not to Rosneft. No wonder Russian officials were jubilant that Rosneft had pulled off a deal which will deliver a large chunk of the cash they need to fill gaps in the state budget caused by economic slowdowns caused by the sanctions. As for the buyers, Sergei Alashenko, a former deputy head of Russia's central bank, wrote in a blog post earlier this year, the main question in relation to this transaction, as ever, still sounds like this. Who is the real buyer of the 19.5% stake in Rosneft? Now, the money that we're hearing that Carter Page got, Seth Rogen, I believe, he's the one that came out and said that, well, that's like around $19 million, right? $19.5 million. Trump says, well, I want a little taste. You got to give me 1.5%. And that doesn't pass the so-called smell test. You really think Trump's going to say, I only want 1.8%. Nah, he wants the 19%. You figure out what to do with the other half.
Yeah.
For instance. Now, we're talking about guys getting, the broker fee, selling the property, doing the transaction. Who bought this stuff at $19 billion? Or what was it, $100 billion? Reuters notes that important facts about the deal either have not been disclosed, cannot be determined solely from public records, or appear to contradict the straightforward official account of the stake being split 50-50 between Swiss oil trading firm Glencore and Coterres. The funding sources for almost a quarter of the deal have not been disclosed by any of the parties. This deal uses a structure of shell companies owning shell companies, commonly referred to in Russia as a matryoshka, after the wooden nesting dolls that open to reveal a smaller doll inside. For instance, public records show the ownership structure of the stake ultimately includes the Cayman Islands company, whose beneficial owners cannot be traced. Unnesting all of the dolls and figuring out the full identities of the buyers should be a top priority for the FBI's collusion investigation and anyone in the media who wants to follow the money of this ever-growing scandal. So Joe Rome is making a treaty out there, and let's stay away from, salacious BS and really get to the heart of the matter. I care about whether Trump's sex habits are kinky or not. I don't even want to think about him at all, to be honest with you.
Right.
Okay, this next article is by Jacob Sugarman out of Alternate. The Wisconsin GOP is calling for a constitutional convention. They need just 5 more states to make it happen. How'd that happen, Wink? How did that happen? 5 more states for a constitutional convention?
Yeah.
Hey, it ain't going to be FDR's second Bill of Rights, let me tell you.
Right.
All eyes are fixed on Capitol Hill as Republicans attempt to pass an American health care bill that's still being revised as of this writing. The recklessness of the party's leadership cannot be overstated. 14 million Americans' insurance and countless essential health benefits hang in the balance, and yet a meeting scheduled next week in the Wisconsin legislature may possess even more terrifying ramifications for the future of the country. According to Wisconsin.gov, Republican lawmakers will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, March 28th, to determine whether Wisconsin will call for a constitutional convention. While a subject of legal debate, changes to America's governing document can be made in one of three ways. 3/4 of the states can ratify an amendment that Congress has passed with supermajorities in both houses. 3/4 of the states, with vast majorities in each, can bypass Congress by invoking Article 5 to approve an amendment, or 2/3 of the states can simply use Article 5 to call a convention of the states and rewrite the document as they see fit. 3/4 of the states would then need to approve their changes. A convention of the states has never been invoked before, but leave it to the Republicans and Koch-backed organizations like Citizens for Self-Government to do it. I'm sorry, I had to add that part. The actual author says they've been salivating over the possibility for years, even holding dress rehearsals in Washington, D.C., with representatives from across the country. You know, when I was in student government, when I was in high school, we would get sent up to Sacramento and, have a student government thing. And then others got chosen to sit at the UN and do like a mock UN thing with students. I love this. Now high school students are sent to Washington, D.C. by right-wing think tanks to figure out how to deconstruct the Constitution and make it more like a monarchy.
Yeah.
Well, oligarchy, but we know who's going to be king in this one. Exactly. It'll be by a board of kings. Okay. With the federal deficit presently hovering just below $20 trillion, their ostensible plan is to add a balanced budget amendment. This alone would likely shred the country's meager social safety net. But as Assembly Minority Leader and Kenosha Democrat Peter Barco warns the Wisconsin State Journal, a constitutional convention could put citizens' very rights up for grabs. Scott Ross, an executive director of the liberal advocacy group One Wisconsin Now, puts it more bluntly. The balanced budget talk is a fig leaf to let them change America into a right-wing alternative universe. Balanced budget. How many times have we heard that before? And then we get a Democratic president, like a black one. Or I don't know, like a Clinton.
Yeah.
And what? Now it's like, well, deficits don't matter when we take over. Come on. They had a surplus, let's spend it. I mean, come on. In an essay earlier this month, Alternet's Tom Hartman, who was also heard right after this show, 6 minutes after the hour, of course, explored a few scenarios that were once stuff of Federalist Society fever dreams and are now all too plausible. Imagine if the U.S. Constitution barred the EPA and the Department of Education from existing. All union protections are dead. There are no more federal workplace safety standards, and even child labor laws are struck down, along with a national minimum wage. Imagine that the Constitution makes it illegal for the federal government to protect you from big polluters, big banks, or even big food and pharma. All are free to rip you off or poison you, and your only remedy is in state courts and legislators because the Constitution prevents Congress from doing anything about any of it. The federal government cannot even enforce voting or civil rights laws. To add injury to insult, the federal government has to shut down Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid because all of these programs, along with food stamps, housing supports, and any programs that help the middle class, the less fortunate, or disabled, are beyond the reach of what the federal government can do. If passed, Wisconsin would become the 29th state to call for a constitutional convention. Just 34 are needed for it to become a reality. The 2016 elections have left Republicans in control of 33 state legislators. According to the AP, the Democratic Party has lost more than 1,000 governorships, state legislative and congressional seats combined since 2008. And I should say a lot of that is by gerrymandering too, by the way. So there may be some hope, all right, in the midst of this, and not just hollow hope, but actual efforts by groups such as Indivisible and, I got to say, vast elements of the Democratic Party finally.
Yep.
This can be turned back starting with these midterms. And in fact, I would make the entreaty that it's even happening now. There are special elections happening now. So let those be our practice parts, okay? All right, let's get out of here. We'll see you next week, same time, same station here on the After Show. But in between, you have some live Netroots Radio produced shows. Saturday nights, a Roundtable Roundhouse Power Hour with Wink and Roaring Girl, 9 p.m. on the West Coast, midnight on the East Coast. A 1-hour opportunity for live call-in talk radio. And, of course, Jibber Your Jabber with Wink on Sunday beginning at 9 p.m. West Coast, midnight East. So call in. And with that, hey, Wink, I'm going to tell them they should listen to Netroots Radio 24/7, 365. And just before Hartman comes up here at 6 minutes after the hour, we'll listen to Los Gentiles by El Polen. And so listen to Netroots Radio 24/7, 365. And why? Because who loves you, baby? Oh, and one other thing, Wink, I will see you on the other side.
There you go. With that, we're out.